Hello and welcome to the Subjective Space with me, Sindhu Rajasekaran. Today's guest is Sarah Flocken. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Sarah is a writer, she is a comedian, and she's also the founder of SLH Communications, which she runs out of San Diego in California. So I'm going to start asking Sarah about writing first because we're both writers and that's common between us.
Yeah.
And you just finished the manuscript of your novel, which you're going to be sending out to publishers, I think. And I know it's a historical novel set during the Great Recession, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is weird to think that that's historical fiction now, but apparently some people
exactly.
might consider it that way.
Which was my question for you, because as millennials, we've been through recessions too. So I wanted to know how, what were the parallels that you sort of thought of or felt when you were writing it? And the other thing that I wanted to ask you is you mentioned you'd written somewhere that your protagonist is disaster girl, right? And I was thinking, oh my God, that sounds like a bit like me, because it's like when you set out in your 20s to be a writer and then you're like, I cannot fail. I'm just going to do everything that I can to not fail and go back, to my childhood home. So, so she's a very relatable character. So
Oh, thank
tell
you.
me about how, this idea came about to you and what set you out to writing.
Yeah, so the story behind this novel is, well, okay, so you and I met each other in graduate school, I remember. And
Yeah.
actually I remember when you emailed me about this, I was like, "Oh my God, Sindhu thinks I'm impressive enough to be on a podcast," because I remember meeting you and thinking, "Holy shit, this girl is so impressive. She's already published."
Yeah, I guess I was
Yeah,
published,
like
but
who is
it's
this
still,
woman who already has fiction published? And I was so impressed and intimidated when I first met you. And now I'm honored that you want to talk to me about my writing. So thank you. Thank you,
you're,
first
you're
of all.
absolutely welcome. Yeah. And I've been
Yeah.
following your work all of these years and all the stuff that you've done with communications and your comedy, which we'll come to,
Yeah.
and writing. So you have so many hats on. So we'll come to it. But yeah, let's
Thank
start with the
you. Yeah,
writing.
we'll start with the hat that is taking up the most of my brain space right now. So, my novel. Okay. The working title is "Be Well," because, but I tell people not to get attached to that because I know
Mhm.
publishers, wherever it lands, could change it.
Yeah.
It's based on the very crunchy thing that you hear women in America at least say when they're like, "Be well." I always felt like it was kind of a meaningless way to sign off on an email, where it's like,
Yeah.
what does well mean? Like, who are you to
Mm.
tell me how to feel?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the novel started when it was in 2019. I'd been writing short fiction, flash fiction, plays, poetry, a lot of sketch comedy, stand-up comedy bits, things like that. Had not ever attempted to write a novel before, and I knew this was something I wanted to do.
Mm.
I literally took a class called How to Start a Novel through UC San Diego Extension in late 2019, thinking, okay, wow, let's see where this goes.
Mhm.
I came up with the idea for this book during a writing exercise, and then I just basically decided to call my own bluff and see how far I could take it.
Mhm.
And, I plotted it out. Kind of, it's gone back and changed quite a bit. I drafted some initial chapters. I did some character sketches, and then I was like, but you know what? I'll leave this for a while because I have a wedding to plan. We are
Yeah.
set to get married in April 2020.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah. Though, so wedding got postponed. And
Mhm.
then there I was thinking, well, shoot, we're all on lockdown. There's nothing else I can do right now. So I devoted all of my spare time basically to seeing how far I could take this novel. I finished
Mhm.
I have a post on my Substack about how long it took me to finish this novel in all of its various drafts and incarnations. But yeah, I finished that first initial draft, and I think I want to say summer 2020. I could be
Mhm.
wrong, but then here I am 8 drafts later, and actually now in the middle of a ninth round of revisions, basically doing all of my agent's edits before we go out on submission in January. Yeah, so the story has evolved, like the actual plot has evolved quite a bit, but the central question has kind of remained of, how easy is it to fall into unquestioning belief in something when circumstances feel desperate? So the log line of my novel is, awkward young woman graduates straight into the Great Recession in Los Angeles, does increasingly desperate and stupid things to avoid moving back to her desert hometown. And the
Mhm.
second part of that is because she doesn't want to live in the shadow of her televangelist father.
Mhm.
But then while she's in Los Angeles and so desperately seeking, the way to get that job that allows her to not move back home, she maybe accidentally gets involved in a cult or
Oh,
cult-like organization. So, belief at both ends of the
interesting.
spectrum, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. It's I nobody is safe as far as who I'm, sort of gently make fun of in this book. But the point is I didn't want to like put any one side on blast. I don't want to
Yeah.
put the evangelical folks on blast. I don't want to put the crystal people on blast,
Mhm.
because I think a lot of the unquestioning belief that you'll find in anything, it's kind of two sides of the same coin. And it comes from this
Mhm.
place of, I will do anything if it makes me feel better. I will do anything if it gives me a path forward. And so
Mm.
through this sort of unhinged, ridiculous plot, that's kind of the question that I'm getting at in this novel. And yes, because I am a comedian, I've assured my agent that literally everything I write from here will be funny. I
Yeah.
promise. If it's not, tell me to revise it until it is.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Mhm.
that's a very roundabout way of answering your question of how I
Yeah.
started writing this book.
No, I think what you said about comedy now, let's talk about that a bit because you're a comedian, you do improv, you also host the what is it called? The Pandemonium
Yes.
in San Diego. So when you were writing, did you sort of bring in a lot of comedy? You just said it will be funny
Oh
and
yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah,
No, it's hard for me to not write in kind of a snarky, funny way.
yeah.
Oh, honestly, in going back and doing the revisions is where I had to inject a lot more of the depth and the feeling. My first draft was just, there was a 5-page there was a 5-page scene involving diarrhea that I had to
Oh
cut
my
from the
God.
draft.
Okay, I'd like to read that. So is it still
Yeah,
there
you
in
want to
the
read the
yeah.
yeah, become become my friend, read the diarrhea version of my novel.
Oh my gosh, that's interesting. Okay, so tell me more about your comedy, right? Like, tell me about have you always been doing that? Because I know you were doing that even when we met in graduate school. You were so has that been something that did you see yourself as a writer first, as like an aspiring comedian? What did you see yourself as when you were growing up, and like how did you get here?
Oh, when I saw myself growing up first as, I mean, as far as what I drew a picture of myself doing in
Hmm.
school when they asked us to draw what we wanted to be when we grew up, I actually drew myself as a novelist reading into a proto like dictaphone Siri kind of thing. I mean,
Uh-huh.
this is in the 90s,
Yeah,
so I was ahead of my curve in
yeah.
predicting, voice recognition and AI and Siri and all that. But so that's how I saw myself in the future, was as a writer. As far as when I developed this sense of, oh, I'm funny, oh, I want to do comedy, I need, I think everybody's like, when did you first realize you were funny? I'm like, I don't know, right now, you laughed. I don't know, it's, the first time I remember telling a joke and then having everybody around me just lose it, and that feeling of power that I got. Cause right, like, my dissertation actually in grad school was about, like, the power dynamics and gender stuff with comedy and
Yeah,
how it's represented in our case literature, but then
yeah,
lots of other areas now too. If it's probably reads like ancient history, because I wrote this thing back in 2011, back when
yeah, yeah,
30 Rock was the biggest
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Oh
And
my God.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that feels like
um
ages ago. Yeah.
yeah, so I think the first time I ever realized I was funny was, I would think I was in like junior high. Like I'm like 13 years old, and um this is weird. It's like, what is the first joke you ever told to a group of people? I probably told more than this, but the first time I remember that feeling of power that comes from making people laugh was like,
Yeah.
people were making jokes about, like, having six-pack abs or something, and I said, I don't have a six-pack or even a four-pack. I got a crunched can.
Yeah.
And then, and it's like, yes, it's a joke I made at the expense of myself,
Yeah.
but that was like, oh, okay. And people just thought that was hilarious. And they were like joking about, joking about it to me later and everything like that. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, this is, maybe in a little bit of an unhealthy way. I kind of was like, okay, this is
Mm.
how I make friends now,
Yeah. Oh
like,
no.
you
Yeah, just
know,
like making fun of yourself.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah, cut to 20 some odd years later in Sarah's therapist's office.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
talked about this. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's not always been, I'm sure, a healthy impulse, but I
Mm.
have, and also a lot of it is rooted in, let's be real. I grew up in Southern California where there is an industry, we'll call it a film
Mm.
industry. I
Mm.
mean, you're privy to how some film industry things are, and there, at least when I was growing up in the 90s and 2000s, there was a standard of beauty, and I was not it.
Mm.
I was heavier,
Mm.
so I really leaned into that funny fat girl thing.
Mhm.
Um, Now I'm a funny mid-sized girl.
Yeah.
If we're
Mm.
By the way, I love that mid-size is now a category. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's me. That's what I've been my whole life. It's just that,
Yeah.
kind of,
It's a funny thing, right? Because in different cultures, it's different things. So I grew up in India,
yeah.
and so I was a skinny kid, and I was always bullied for that. And all these older aunties would come tell me, "Oh my God, you're so thin. Who's ever gonna marry you? Like, how do you ever have a baby? You're like, eat more food." It's like,
Oh my
there's
God.
no body type that you can have that everyone's gonna be happy with
Well,
anyway.
yeah,
Like
it's like to be female is like, well, great. There's just you're never gonna
yeah.
make anybody happy.
Exactly. So I've had to grow up with the thing of, oh my God, I have no flesh. Like
Oh my God.
I'm a skeleton.
Oh my God.
It's like that.
We
So
can't win.
we cannot win. But
Yeah.
so I want to talk to you about AI, but I will come to that when I talk to you more about SLH communications
Yeah,
because
for sure.
and all of that. So, but tell me about pandemonium first. So tell me
Oh,
about what is that exactly? I was like, what is that? What
okay, yeah. So
happens?
that's going to require a bit more context.
Yeah.
So we started at like the very beginning of Sarah's history as a funny person. I did my first stand-up comedy open mic when I was 17. Like my mom knew the guy who was in charge, and I had to leave before a certain time because that's when the bar opened, and I wasn't allowed to be inside as an under 21 person.
Yeah.
But that was the bug of like performing comedy for me. And before that, I did competitive improv. I
Mhm.
was the captain of my high school's comedy sports team. I started it actually. I wanted a space to do, make stuff up on the spot and do improv competitively.
Mhm.
So, everybody's like, "How long you been doing improv?" And I'm like, "Since I was a teenager." And it sounds
Yeah.
terrible, but
Yeah.
started doing improv before a lot of other things.
Yeah.
And so I'd already had this deep background in long and short form improv. I had done stand up on and off. When I moved to Washington D.C., I was working a communications job there. I think I may have made like one too many bad pun jokes in a meeting because my boss said, "Hey, I know someone who runs a pun contest at the DC Improv. You should check it out. This might be
Yeah.
good for you." And the tone was very much like, you need an outlet. Go get that out of your
Mhm.
system and don't do it here.
Yeah. Not at
So,
work.
yeah. So I did that. Competitive punning for background
Mhm.
is a thing nationwide
Wow.
in the
Okay.
US at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually in the UK now. They have UK Pun Off, which I think it was mostly virtual during the pandemic, but I think it's in London now. I'm not
Mhm.
totally sure. I would
Mhm.
not be surprised if it's in Canada. I would
Okay.
absolutely not be surprised if there's
Interesting.
competitive
Uh,
punning in
I
Vancouver.
am completely fascinated by those of you who can do things on the spot. Like as a writer, for me, I need to like slog away by myself for like hours to create like 5 sentences that I'm proud to present. For you to just go out there and just make up jokes on the spot and just like I'm amazed by that. Like I've never
Oh,
done slam poetry or like anything like that. So it's amazing. I
oh,
mean,
thank
that's
you.
confidence.
Ah, thank you. See, honestly, for me, it's like I think it's the whole reason I'm able to write and draft because if I didn't have this, muscle memory being used to just going out there and absolutely failing, because I have
Mm.
done that so many times, improv gets you very used to just failing
Oh no.
and not landing and
Yeah.
just stuff not working. But you just get it out. Like, it's like going with the
Mm.
first impulse. And honestly, like going with the weird first impulse is what makes the audience laugh a lot of the time. It's
Mhm.
very hard to explain, but that I think impacts how I write. Like when I'm in the
Mhm.
drafting phase, I have to be a pantser. Like I have to just like, like right by the seat of my pants. And then I can go back and edit. And when I'm editing, oh my God, it takes forever and it's a total slog. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, like the being able just like following the so much of my novel, I like to say, was written according to the improv comedy rule of if this, then what? Like, if this is true
Mm.
in this universe, what other weird thing is true? And
Yeah.
so that's, that's kind of what I
But
follow when I
that's
write. But
interesting.
like,
I've never heard that before. That's interesting. If this so, then
yeah,
what?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
clearly that has to be like how fantasy writers and people who do all
Mm.
that world building, right? Because I
Hmm.
can't imagine how otherwise. You got to have some
Yeah.
kind of imagination and just be able to like follow rabbit holes like that. But anyway, sorry, I'm getting off topic. Pandemonium.
Oh yeah, you didn't tell me what that was.
Yeah,
Yeah, what is that?
pandemonium is well, so I started competitive punning in DC. When I moved to San Diego, I was like, "Oh, I liked that. That was fun. I want to do that again." So I started San Diego's version of a pun contest. Now, there's multiples of these throughout the US. There's Punderdome in New York. There's It's Always Punny in Philadelphia. There is Pun DMV in Washington, D.C., which I used to compete when it was called Beltway Pundits. There's the O. Henry Pun Off, which is the big granddaddy national competition in Austin, Texas. I have competed there. I got MVP last year, most viable punter. And yeah, and there's Bay Area
Congratulations.
Pun Off up north, and then there's San Diego Pandemonium, which I run down
Hmm.
in San Diego. What you There's a couple of ways you can do competitive punning, but there's usually like some of the same events. And the two that we do are people can come prepared with a 2-minute speech full of puns on a given topic. And, you get judged on both quality and quantity of puns.
Hmm.
And I also read a long definition of what a pun is at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
If you want, I can dig that up and read that for you. Um, yeah, and so that's the prepared portion. Like I
Hmm.
competed in that in the O. Henry Punoff in Austin, Texas, and I did a gender bent version of the Hamlet soliloquy, but with a
Hmm.
theme of cartoon character puns. So I
Yeah.
started off with, Scooby or not Scooby.
I mean, this is a question I've always had that I wanted to ask comedians, right? Because in a world where everyone's sort of walking on eggshells because they do not want to offend somebody, or now
Mhm.
everyone wants to get offended. Now in America, I guess people want to offend. I mean, in it's like
Mhm.
so in comedy, like, do you ever think about that? Like, do you think? I mean, then you cannot make any jokes, right? Like, if you're thinking constantly, like, oh my god, what if I offend that person or this person? So how?
Oh yeah.
And with puns, like, I'm sure that you're offending somebody.
And so here's the thing is like I actually had this very same conversation with my mom's boyfriend where he was basically trying to ask me, he's like, how does anybody tell jokes anymore? He kept going
Yeah.
with that. And I basically told him the rule is read the room.
Mm.
Like you got to be real good. You have to have really good emotional intelligence, I think, to be a good comedian. You have to be able
Mhm.
to read the room and know what the power dynamics are in there. Good, like they always tell us in every improv thing I've ever done, every improv class I've ever taken, the idea is punch up. Like,
Mhm.
don't don't go for like low hanging fruit. Like,
Mhm.
making fun of a group of people is kind of only funny if it's of like
Mm.
someone who's in power, right?
Mm. Yeah,
Like
that
for,
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, and a lot of the time too, it's like the more comfortable you are with the people you're on stage with, the more comfortable everybody else in the audience is going to be from an improv perspective. Like, for
Mm.
example, I'm with two groups in San Diego and we know each other. We, hang out socially.
Mhm.
We talk on a group chat. And so like when we're together on stage, we kind of know the vibe of each other and how far we can go. We know
Yeah.
who's comfortable with what level of physical touching, we
Yeah.
know like who, what is a no-go zone for one person, but really it's just like getting comfortable enough that, you trust yourself and
Mhm.
again know that you're going to mess up
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
just that's just
Yeah.
it is you have to know you're going to mess up. And
Yeah.
I know for a fact there are going to be things in my book that probably are going to offend someone. And
Yeah.
the
You
thing
gotta
I
live
also
with
have to
that. That's
acknowledge,
fine. Yeah. You
yeah, the
just
thing I
kind of
have,
live with that. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like to live is like we were talking about earlier, like there's, yeah, you're female, there's no winning. Like to live also, it's like, yes, we try to be as careful as possible. The point is be kind, like,
Mhm.
and really point out like a lot of what I, like to do in comedy is point out the absurdity of like kind of modern life and the way we function in society in general. Like it's
Mhm.
not a group of people. It's,
Mhm.
humanity, really. How
Yeah.
weird we are
Yeah.
as humans. That's kind of where I'm coming from with
Mhm.
any joke that I make. And
Mhm.
puns, actually, I think that, unless you get, unless there is a racial slur or,
Mm.
something, we've had things get weird at a pun show for sure. But like, I try to create a very inclusive environment, a very like fun, just like we're here for communal silliness. And thankfully, I haven't really had any issues, like that many issues in the
Mm.
pun contest. I mean, the on the spot stuff, like
Mm.
most of the time, so there's another portion, right, where we call it the
Mm.
Punger Games. It's like the nerdiest rap battle you've ever seen. I draw a
Yeah.
topic out of my hat, out of my little
Mhm.
host fanny pack, and people have to go back and forth making puns on it. Like, say the
Yeah.
topic is, I don't know, cheese. Somebody grab the
Mhm.
mic and be like, "Oh, that sounds Gouda to me," and then you
Yeah.
just go back and forth like that. The stuff that people come like most of the time when someone just goes "Bleh," and like spits out something that might be
Oh,
accidentally offensive, most of the time the audience is just laughing at like the person up there squirming and like,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
that's nice. I mean, I enjoy watching it. Like I never do it, but I love watching comedy. Okay, so now you tell me about SLH Communications and when you started that, because first you were on the West Coast, you were sorry East Coast, you were working with other organizations, and then you sort of came to the East and started your own thing.
Mhm.
So what sort of inspired you to have your own establishment, like start your own company? And how has that been for you?
Yeah, so I after grad school, when you last left our intrepid hero, I ended up in Washington D.C. doing some in-house communications type jobs because that's where the work was. And I really wanted to not live at home for a while, basically, because I was 23 and yeah.
Yeah. You want to
So
see the
I
world. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So I ended up in Washington, D.C., worked in house several places, met my now husband. I convinced him after a while that there was life on the West Coast in California, and I wanted to live in the West Coast again and not become a DC lifer. Like it was very easy to do. And
Mhm.
so we moved out to California when he got a job. And I had always in the back of my mind thought, oh, maybe I should go out on my own someday. Maybe I
Mhm.
might be good at this. Who knows? Because I was a good little type A worker who was always praised for being, a go getter and, taking initiative and having ideas and things like
Mhm.
that. And one day I remember I was walking my sister's dog and I was thinking about something that someone had said to me in DC at work, which was it was after I'd written a speech for some executive or another, and he
Mhm.
said, "Congratulations, you made him sound like a human here instead of a robot."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Sound like a human."
Mm.
SLH. I should use
Yeah.
those if I ever start my own thing. So
Yeah.
fast forward to end of 2017. This was well before the idea of, remote work was super common for
Mm.
corporations. I was working remotely for my old job in DC, but it was not going to be a permanent situation. I
Mhm.
started looking for other gigs. I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm a PR person. I can work anywhere.
Mhm.
I started getting better offers for contract work than anything else.
Mhm.
And then I was like, okay, I guess this is my time. This is it. I build the business around the clients and it's going on, let's see, yeah, s let's see, has it been oh my god, it's been 7 years,
Wow. Yeah, I
early
mean,
next
congrats.
year.
You have also been recognized by like the San Diego Business Journal and the San Diego Press Club. So, obviously you run a successful organization. So congratulations.
Thank you. I submitted myself for a lot of those awards because you
I mean,
have to do your own
yeah,
promotion.
yeah, I know. I mean, you work in PR and communications, you know that.
Yeah,
So you're like, it's just part of the work.
it is part of the
So,
gig, but, what is nice is, like, it's a panel of your peers judging these things, and sometimes it's voted
yeah.
on by the membership and stuff like that, so
Mm.
that is nice. I was also part of a team that won, a national, PRSA, Public Relations Society of America award
Mhm.
for, work we did on a Planned Parenthood affiliate,
Mhm.
which that was a time. Oh my God.
Mhm.
Still a time, will be a
Mhm.
time for the next
Yeah.
however many years. It's just,
Yeah. We'll have to wait on that conversation. That's a longer podcast
that's a
episode.
longer conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you have a lot to say. So tell me about the AI bit, right? Because I know on your website, on the SLH Communications website, it says sound like a human. So I wanted to ask you what that meant. Now that you said the backstory of, do not sound like a robot, like sound like a human, the story of the person that before you wrote the
Mhm.
speech for. And also it's funny because now we are in the sort of AI, times of AI when a lot of people are using AI to write speeches and write like their emails and whatnot. And some of it makes sense, but a lot of it does not.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, do people use AI to write press releases and stuff like that these days? Are they trying to cut costs by just using AI? Like,
Oh,
are companies doing
100%.
that?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, what's weird is I started my business before generative AI was really
Mm-hmm.
popularly known about, and like sound like a human was just like, "Oh, okay, just don't want somebody to sound like a jargony robot." And then it's like, okay, Gen AI comes along and I'm like, okay, that aged well. I really had to think, okay, one, how am I going to compete with this? And two, how do I, spin this into an asset basically? So
Mm-hmm.
yes, a lot of the like really tedious, boilerplate kind of stuff like a press release, a lot of people are using generative AI at least to start
Mm-hmm.
drafts of that.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, you need a human involved at every step of the way. That's
Mm.
fine if you do an early draft, but my God, like do not put something out without having it, be at least heavily reviewed by a human.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I've seen and like you can tell like when something like a social media caption is all AI generated. Like
Yeah.
it's very like general and not specific
Yeah.
and you like I at least I like to think I have good enough spidey sense right now. It will evolve to a point
Mm.
where it is going to be,
Mm.
very, very, very hard.
Copying more and more. So it'll copy better.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I guess yeah, so what I kind of also try and sell myself as is I don't just do like the normal written PR stuff. Like
Mhm.
I have a whole suite of services where I coach people on how to, I do executive speaking coaching and media training, like how
Mm.
to talk on a podcast like this and be engaging
Mm.
and entertaining. I
Mhm.
the theater and the improv background has come in real handy to that because
Mm.
I found I have to be this big personality to like stand out in the PR field. So,
Yeah.
it's like, God damn it, you will not replace me with AI, Like I have to be like a
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
that is irreplaceable with AI to like survive at all
Yeah.
in this
See,
field.
your humor is a USP, right? Unique selling product, because the AI cannot understand humor. I mean, not yet, and I don't
Not
think it
yet.
will for some time. It's not easy because
Yeah.
it's very subjective. It's very in the moment. As you said, you have to read the room. Like, can AI always read the room? Like, can I?
Yeah, it's
It's
funny. Like I've seen people do improv shows where they will do a scene where they say a line and then they have ChatGPT respond to it. Like, how
yeah,
would this person respond? Sometimes the results are oddly human. Sometimes it's like, what? And like half of the funny comes from like someone responding to this wackadoodle thing that the AI has just said. Other times, like there's actually I forget one of the pun contests did try to have chat gpt compete with people and making puns.
hmm hmm
The puns that AI makes are mediocre at best
yeah,
because well I think it's just like nobody has invested time in making a large
Hmm.
language model want to play with the english language or any
yeah,
language. By the way,
hmm
spanish has a ton of really good puns.
yeah. Oh, does it?
Yeah, yeah, I'll have to like there's a gal that competes in one of our shows frequently. She tells one where uh oh, I'll have to remember it exactly. But yeah, it's like there are a lot of like dual sound puns in the Spanish language, and they're
Hmm.
great.
No, that's good. So, this is another question I had for you, right? If somebody is setting out to, set up a communications agency now,
Mhm.
with AI doing all of this generative stuff, so what advice would you give them?
Well, I would say lean into the qualitative stuff that a an algorithm can't do. Like a lot of PR is still very relationship based. You
Mm,
have to lean like when I first came out to San Diego, I had, my biggest selling point was, "Hey, I'm fresh from DC. I can help you with national media." And
mhm,
that was the fun shiny object that I could dangle in front of people. I still use that to a bit. I still lean on a lot of relationships and just knowledge of how things work. Essentially, you can go to ChatGPT or Gemini or any of those things, and you can say, hey, come up with a good communication strategy to achieve these objectives,
Mhm.
it'll give you like a bare bones idea, and some of them, and maybe some good ideas for some tactics to use. But really, the thing you have to emphasize is your insider knowledge, your connections, and your human flexibility, essentially. Like the human mind is flexible and adaptable right now when things suddenly change,
Mhm.
like when, you know, AI is programmed to respond a certain way exactly to how you input things.
Yeah.
You need to be able to emphasize like how flexible and just like adaptable you are when
Mhm.
things go sideways, and just
Yeah.
kind of think quickly on your feet, which, hello, back to improv. God,
Yeah.
where would I be if I had never done improv comedy?
Yeah. So I think that's a very important thing, right? Because when sort of things don't work out and things are crashing, then you got to be funny about it and be like, okay, let's just do something else, I guess.
Yeah, like, okay, like, let's just do something else right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's, and really, I feel like the best results that I have gotten for clients are from the times where it's like, hey, I know you, I know this very specific thing about you. Let's try this and see if
Mm,
it'll work and see if it'll get the attention that you guys want. And
mm.
yeah, really, like, so much of what you need to emphasize as a PR person is not like, oh, I write the best press releases.
Yeah.
Oh, I can build the best press list. Besides, earned media is changing quite a bit, and that's again a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But it's not, oh, I can write marketing copy. Yeah,
Mm,
a computer or a computer can write marketing copy. Now, it's you have to be about, these are the types of relationships I can bring into this. This is
mm,
how I am to work with. These are some of the genuine, I like, come with ideas. Like, you have to, really be able to sell you and your unique ideas
mm.
more than ever. But people are hungry for a more human option. You just have to emphasize what a good human you are.
Hmm. I think there's no way that AI can do the strategy, right, on a larger scale, like you're saying, like it to be very to look to take your sort of client as a whole into focus and be like, how can I help this person and not just any person, like this particular person. I don't think AI can ever do that, at least for a while. So
Yeah.
I think that's a very human thing now. So I'm just convincing myself that AI cannot take over the world.
Oh, well, actually, yeah, that's something I'd want to ask you. So, like, as an author, a multi-published author, like, how are you and your publishers, like, how are you dealing with all of the generative AI stuff? Is it in your contracts? Like, how are you guys doing
So
that?
actually, it's very interesting. Before I tell you about publishing, in academia, so as part of my PhD, I was also teaching courses, right?
Yeah.
So one of our main jobs was to make sure that the students are not using generative AI to write
Mm,
essays and stuff like that. So I've become very good at, like, I just know if it's human written or AI written. Like, I can just look at something and be like, this is not human. So it's like people in the humanities are becoming like cops who are like, we're like detectives, or like we're like those officers who are just like, we know, when AI has written something. so
oh
so
my
anyway,
God.
so that's happening. But as far as publishing is concerned, I think there is obviously the focus is on human writing, like, and you can tell, right? Like, if it's going to be, it's because AI is generative, it's not original. The whole point of literature is that it's original. So if you're just sort of regurgitating stuff, people know that I mean, even if a human was doing that, they wouldn't publish that anyway. So, it's
Hmm.
like, if an AI is doing that, obviously it's off the sort of table. But it's very interesting for me. So I think people should be using it smartly, like to say, get a list of bullet points of whatever
Hmm.
that's out there, like use it smartly. Don't use it to write the stuff. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would people do that unless they were like horrible writers?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's so funny. It's like people are talking about it like, oh, at some point, you'll be able to like type in and just, or maybe people are doing this now, I think, where it's just like,
Mm,
I want to hear a story about this, this, and this, and this, and you can like write a really detailed prompt, and the thing
mm,
allegedly will spit out a novel. Whether it's any good, I don't know, but I guess
yeah,
that's, again, that's all subjective. It's up to the eye. Like, what if somebody is just really good at writing prompts?
yeah.
How are we going to deal with that? I'm just like, yeah, I don't know.
This is funny because I was also chatting about this with some of my novelist and poet friends, right? Because one of the things that ChatGPT is made to do a lot is write poetry, and my
Mm,
poet friends, poet friends are like, "What does that mean? If AI is writing poetry, and is it like the most? Is it like the easiest thing to do, or is it the most profound thing to do? You know,
I don't
it's like
know.
it is a funny world. It's a funny world,
Yeah.
but and also if AI is poetry, right? I mean, some entity is writing it, so is it a real thing? Like all of that sort of philosophical stuff.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
let's not. That's a whole different like
Oh,
space.
I know.
But
Yeah.
coming back to the many hats you wear. So
Mhm.
you know, how do you keep everything going? Because you're obviously improv and like the comedy and the writing and also SLH communication. I mean, doing communications is sort of like a time-consuming job because you're obviously, if you're a woman entrepreneur, that's another sort of extra thing, like making all the contacts, keeping your contacts,
Mhm.
all of that. So how do you manage? Do you have like an ikigai formula? Like what do you do?
Yes, there's my answer, the fact that I just, like, started laughing when you asked if I had a um, well, I guess in the early years of building my business, like, that's kind of what my focus was. Like, it was just, like, that's what I felt like I kinda did all day, every day for at least, like, a year there. Once I sort of got into a rhythm with the business, I'm like, "Okay, this is how I make money. This is how I do this. This is how I live," basically.
Hmm.
Then I was able to start layering in other things, and it's trial and error. Like, it's having to pull back from things sometimes. It's, continuing even to have conversations with the people in my life about work-life balance and
Mm.
struggling to just, okay, put the laptop down. You don't that email can wait. Like, I still have this drive to be like responsive and on top of things all the time. Cause yeah, I am driven by this deep fear that it's like, oh, if I slip up in any way, if I'm seen as unreliable, they'll drop me. Cause I just, I'm expendable, right? I'm PR, but
Yeah.
so that is an internal struggle. And I know that as life goes on, as things change, I might have to let go of some things or put them down for a while. One thing I'm trying to tell myself is that if I have to put something down for a while, it's not forever. I have to,
Mm.
I've been really trying not to operate from this scarcity mindset of like, if I stop it, I'll never do this again. It's like, no,
Mm.
you can do it again. It might look different, but you can do it again. I mean, the one thing that you will have to pry from my cold dead hands is the writing. And I am very glad that that's something I'm able to do with like, in relatively small chunks of time,
Mm.
at a time during the day or whenever. And I don't need to go anywhere special to do it as long as I have like a working laptop or notepad or notes app on my phone.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, the balance is just like, admittedly, I do too much. A lot of the time I go, go, go. I do, do, do. I am not very good at sitting still.
Yeah.
I had to start meditating during the pandemic. Like everybody had told me for years, Sarah, you are a high strung, there I'll spare you the less colorful language, but Sarah, you are so high strung, you're so anxious, you need to like meditate or something. I didn't listen to them until the pandemic and I
Yeah.
had to deal with like a canceled wedding and we had
Mm.
a celebration later, but
Yeah.
like
Mm.
all the stress of everything, I had to start
Yeah.
meditating. And even now it's just like sitting still is like sitting still for 3 to 5 minutes at a time is still a struggle for me sometimes. And it's something I
I
want
hear
to get
you.
better at.
Yeah. I hear you on that one. It's like it's very hard for me to to sit,
Yeah.
just not doing anything. What does that mean? What does that feel like? But is
Yeah.
it? But how do you like put your? I mean, that's the thing, right? When you're running your own sort of business, you feel like you have to be on top of everything all the time. Then you're not ever putting your phone off. You're like always like, okay, that email, I'll just see it, but maybe I would. But if you see it, you're going to respond to it, or you're going to think about it. Like there's no
Mhm.
just looking at it and forgetting about it, right? So do you consciously think that going forward in your life you're going to try and have more work life balance, or is that something? Because I think about that all the time. Like I feel like I have to write all the time. I'm like, I can't write all the time. Nobody can write all the time. It's just
No.
you can't. You need to live life to be able to write about stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah. So how do you manage that? This is more like me therapy. It's like therapy. I'm just asking you for tips.
Yeah. Well, you're the one you have a daughter, right? Like you
Hmm.
that's I'm the
See,
one I
actually,
don't
that's helpful because that's one thing I do, that when I'm with her, when I'm spending time with her, I'm very present.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna check anything. That's one time that I'm like really there. So not
Yeah.
doing work. So when I'm cooking, maybe, or those are the only times. All other times, I'm just like panicking that I've not done this, I've not done that. I could have done this. I could have done that. Like, it's
Yeah.
just, yeah, it's
I
hard.
guess, yeah, I guess for both of us, it's just like recognizing that we're never going to have all of it done all the time and being okay with that. And
Yeah.
just getting used to that limbo space of it's never going to all get done. Like the
Mhm.
to-do list is never going to be fully checked off. Like I have like a running to-do list for my work day where I literally just highlight things that absolutely need to be done that day.
Mhm.
But I also change it all the time. I move things to the next day, or like, I give myself like very early deadlines so I can bump them back to when I actually need to get
Smart
it done.
move. Yeah.
Thanks. It's like that friend you have that's always late for everything. And so you tell them to get there an hour earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of do that with a lot of my internal work deadlines.
It's very funny because I feel like I don't know what I do on my laptop or on the internet. I feel like AI or the internet knows that I'm so anxious about my time. So it's like it's always putting up these ads where it's like AI that can help you optimize your day and your
Oh
time.
my
And I'm just
God.
like,
Yeah.
how do you know what I'm thinking? Like, how do you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like it's your Google searches. It's like your behavior online. Like it.
Yeah.
I swear, if it's like tracking how many tabs we're clicking between, it's like, hey, do you need a virtual assistant?
Yeah, I know. It's like, oh my God. I think a lot of people do use them nowadays. It's like a lot of people I know have a virtual assistant who are like, the virtual assistant does their like, scheduling and all of
Hmm.
that stuff. I still don't do that. I still manually, I have like a planner.
Yay! That's a very pretty planner.
Thank you. But I enjoy that. Like I enjoy physically being like thinking, okay, I'm gonna write this down. Like this is the time. I
Yeah.
don't use AI, but do you use a lot of AI for your support? Like do you have a team of AI?
Oh no, God no. I have a Gemini plugin. I have a Google Gemini plugin in my like work workspace. Mostly what it's really helped me do is create lists of, you know, say I want to build up a list of reporters that cover a certain topic. It
Mm,
helps me create a list of those types
mm,
of reporters. Or it's like, what are some organizations I could partner with from this kind of company that wants to do this and get this level of recognition? It'll help me generate lists of things to look into, basically. Like
mhm.
I essentially use it as a super Google
Yeah,
for right now. I have occasionally had it write a difficult email for me, and then I have to edit it to death because that's just me.
yeah.
Um, there was one time, yeah, I've a couple of times for like very basic things like press releases. I
Mm,
have said like, okay, write a press release for this company about
mm,
this, and
mm.
then spit something out, and then I edit it to death. But at least it gets me started.
Mm, mm.
That's
I
kind of
the
what I've done it
editing is
for.
the thing. Like you have to really edit anyway, like whatever it writes. If it, I've spoken about the same thing to a lot of people who run communications consultancies, and that's what they've all said. Like they've said that even if you use it, like you have to edit so much after it's
Hmm.
written it. So it's like you could just write it. Like there's no.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
It's
it gets you started. Like
yeah.
it's helpful for getting you started, and I have to say, I love using it for a list of things to look into. I got the idea to
Mm,
use it like that for my business when I heard about someone I knew using it to look up, camps to send her kid to over the summer, like a list
mhm.
of camps and summer programs. And I was like, oh, instead of just
Yeah.
Googling this after this, I could just like have a list of things to just already go look into.
Yeah, that's so. I was looking at ChatGPT one day, and my daughter came up to me, and she's like, "Can I ask it some questions?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Go ahead." And then she's like saying, "My friend said this to me. What should I say to my friend?" And then ChatGPT actually was like, gave good advice. ChatGPT was like, the emotional, the social aspect, and it's like, giving all of that. I'm like, interesting. So, is this what people are talking to ChatGPT about? I don't know. Like,
Oh, no, there's a whole thing, like, I
yeah.
like, this is gonna be fascinating, like, people don't realize that, like, their answers or the questions they type in aren't anonymous, and so, like, I
Mm.
was reading something somewhere about there's all these archives out there of people asking ChatGPT, like, the most personal questions, like,
Oh.
how should I tell someone I'm leaving them? Like, all this like,
Yeah.
for real.
Yeah. And it's just there somewhere, like in the internet, like
And it's
stored in
just out
some
there,
cache
yeah.
somewhere. And it's probably helping ChatGPT form answers for somebody else as well. It's like it's
Exactly.
part
Yeah.
of
And
the.
if someone really wanted to, they could track what you asked to your IP address.
Oh
Like,
my gosh. It's like, see, this is the sort of stuff about ChatGPT that bothers me. Like, the fact that whatever you ask, it's not like really, it's not private. It's like everything is out there. So,
yeah,
oh,
yeah, God, that, and then again, there's a whole other conversation about like
I
what is
know.
privacy.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that's another conversation. But you are in PR and communications, so
Yeah.
it's all about what you put out there. I mean, that's also changing, right? That's another conversation as well. What it means to do publicity in a time when everything is so out there already.
Out there,
Like,
yeah. A lot of
yeah,
it is like people call it reputation management, storytelling. Like
yeah,
it's a weird time, but I am trying to choose to believe that we were chosen to be born in this weird time for a reason. I don't know.
yeah. Maybe that'll be your next novel. That
Yeah,
could be.
actually, my next novel is pretty unhinged as well.
Yeah.
I see. I'm almost afraid to talk about it because I haven't, So I guess I never asked you this when we were in grad school, but like, did you have an agent when you went through your initial book publishing process? Like, how did it work for you?
So in the beginning, for the first, actually, I was luck. It is a very funny story, mine, because the first two books I published directly with publishers,
Hmm.
and the third time, there was the good publishing house that I was like the last set of writers they took on without agents. So I sort of
Oh,
I was initiated into that world, and then after that they needed agents. So and even since with my new publishing house, I got a deal with Simon and Schuster recently for my fourth book.
nice.
That also happened very sort of organically, and like I met the editor, and that's how it happened directly. So yeah, I've not had an agent yet, funnily enough, but I think for the next set of books in the future I should find an agent.
Oh,
So
wow,
it's
that's
just.
amazing. I'm so okay now. I am so much even more awe and in awe of and intimidated by you
No.
than I ever was.
No, but it's lovely talking to you, Sarah. You like the same, I think. I remember you the same way. Like it's been so many years since we spoke, and I'm like, you're the same.
Well, thank you.
But
I haven't changed that much over 14 years, right?
yeah, but we're on the same coast now, so that's nice. They're
Yeah, I know, right?
in
Like,
the
yeah,
same
we're
time
actually.
zone.
I was like, whoa, we're in the same time zone.
Yeah, these days that's how I like bond up with people. I'm like, oh my God, we're in the same time zone.
Oh my
It's like,
God. Yeah.
so, but it was lovely talking to you. Thank you so much. I think we've covered all your different hats.
All the hats. I never was a hat person until recently in real life, actually. Though I bought a big, nice, like big black, like wide brim one, not like an influencer hat, but like a sun hat. And
Oh, that's nice.
I'm getting back into hats again. We'll say.
Yeah, that's nice. That's cool. So, thank you so much, Sarah. This has been a lovely conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sindhu. I really, really appreciate you having me on here.